Rico tapes.
Good morning, everybody. I'm walking around downtown Dublin this morning, and you'll never ever believe who I ran into. He's rolling down the street just taking pictures. It's Walter Ric O.
If my eyes don't deceive me, I think this is Sharon Seacrettes coming down the street towards me. How the hell did she ever find me in Dublin?
Walter, what are you doing here in Dublin? Nice to see you on this clear morning.
I thought it was you, Sharon. Last time I saw you was somewhere in New York City, or was it Chicago? I forget. It's been quite a while. I don't. It's strange running into you here this very morning. I'm just out here taking in the fresh Dublin air, and maybe I'll take a few pictures later on.
So, Walter, it's not really a coincidence that I ran into you today. I was wondering how you feel about the labor movement that's going on in the United States today. What's your opinion of that?
Sharon, I have not really followed it closely, but I understand there is some renaissance of some sorts in the labor movement. I know that labor has shrunk from about 33% in its heyday in the private sector to about the 6% it is today. And if they're having a renaissance and they're on their way back, they got a long way to go, and they're not going to do it just by organizing Starbucks coffee shops and things like that. You need some industrial action like you have in the UAW, which I am seeing, and I'm like seeing it. But there's a lot of things. What I like to express right now, though, more than anything, is that there's so many people, Sharon, that want to talk about going union all the time, but there's so few understand the laws and the structures that are supporting any organizing efforts that they have, and they're not really taking advantage of them. So I think that people really need to get educated to just what a union is and all the various nuances of belonging to and participating and engaging in the labor organization.
Walter, I knew if anybody had an opinion of the United States labor movement, you would have it. And I know a lot of people don't know much about a union. They just know they want to join it. So what can you tell them about that for a start?
Sharon, before we just really start talking about unions, we've got to understand just what a union is. And the first thing we need to know is that union is really such a vague term. The word union is not even defined in the foundational language of the Wagner Act. The word's not even used in the Wagner Act, which is the National Labor Relations Act of 1935. The word they use there is labor organization. So when we talk about unions, we want to be really fundamental. We'll start with the word labor organization. Now, when you say labor organization, you're probably talking about any group of employees who get together to confront an employer for concerning wages, working conditions, hours, things of that nature.
So, Walter, you talk about a labor organization and a union. Well, what is the difference between either one of those?
I'm glad you asked, Sharon, because it's really essential to understand what a labor organization is. And just like I previously said, it's any group of employees, and once they get together, so suppose they form a unit, a collective bargaining unit, A collective bargaining unit is the same thing as a labor organization. It's the same thing as a union. So if you have a labor organization, you could call it a union or you could call it a collective bargaining unit. But I don't want to sound confusing, so let's talk about each one individually. Labor organization is the legal term. The word union is not really used in labor law. But we have groups of people that get together and suppose they want to confront an employer about their wages, hours, and working conditions, and to improve them or even sustain them. Then they form a collective bargaining unit. And suppose they want to be certified by the NLRB or whatever, they don't really have to be. They're still a labor organization, even at the most fundamental level. If a group of 25 Walmart employees got together in a parking lot and decided to go in and said we want a raise, they don't really need a certified union or collective bargaining unit to do that. They are still a labor organization at the most basic level. Then let's talk about collective bargaining units for a minute too, because many times that we see collective bargaining units, they've gone through a certification process, and we'll talk about that in some other episode. But right now, just to get the understanding here, a collective bargaining unit, it might be certified by the NLRB, but does not need to be. So a group of employees get together and they want to bargain. That's a collective bargaining unit, and it's a labor organization. Now, what makes it a collective bargaining unit is, suppose that they need to choose representatives and they want to vote for something and they want to have representatives representing them. They might go to a parent union, let's say like the IBEW, and say we want to become part of the IBEW and we work for this electric shop and we want to be a bargaining unit right here, and they choose the IBEW local union as their representative, which is also a legal term, which we might talk about someday too. And so everybody in that organization is a person, and a person is a member of a collective bargaining unit, and he can also be a member of a union. So once the union accepts the bargaining unit, or should I say agrees to represent a bargaining unit, and they have an election, the unit becomes part of the union. A union can be a collection of collective bargaining units. You might have 10 different bargaining units in a union, and they all bargain separately from each other within the union, and the union is their representative. So that's what a union is. When you say union, the best way to think about that right now is that it's a collection of collective bargaining units, or it may represent just one bargaining unit, which I think is the ideal situation, because when you start getting into different units, you start getting a lot of factions. You got a lot of different people pulling different ways. So that basically is, we got three terms. We got labor organization, which is the legal term, which means it could be a collective bargaining unit or a union, but it's any group of employees get together. If you get that basic understanding right now, then we can move forward, maybe some other day when you catch me on the street, Sharon.
So pretty much the seed and the first part is the labor organization.
That's right, Sharon. That's the basic building block of a union, is the labor organization. Even though you would define both of them as the same, they're both, a union is a labor organization, but the basic building block is the labor organization, and that's made up of a collective bargaining unit.
Okay.
So Walter, we have a labor organization as the seeds, and then once we get past that and they decide what they want to do, then we go into collective bargaining.
That's right, Sharon. You may choose representatives for your collective bargaining, and they represent the collective bargaining unit.
So, Walter, first we have a labor organization where employees get together and they become a collective bargaining unit. When they choose representatives at that point, they have formed their own union. Or, I guess they can choose an existing unit to be their representatives.
I think you understand it, Sharon. They can choose an existing union to be the representatives or representative. However, these are all legally defined terms. So yeah, they can choose to form their own union, or they can basically go to the strength of an existing union to be the representatives. But the fundamental building block, like we said, is just employees getting together for the purposes of collective bargaining for wages, hours, and working conditions. When they get more formalized, they become a collective bargaining unit where they may choose their own representatives or go to a parent organization existing union. But the fundamental concept that we want to get across today, Sharon, is that all these things, the legal term is labor organization, so a union, a collective bargaining unit, they can all be called a labor organization. So you become a union. People say join a union. The first thing they got to do is form a labor organization to get there. So a person, Sharon, can be a member of a labor organization and not belong to a union. A person may be a member of a collective bargaining unit and not really belong to a union. A union is like a very formalized structure with rules and regulations, constitution, and some bylaws. So when you in a union, when you're basically, you say you're in a union, I'm in the IBEW or I'm in the UAW, or whoever you're in, you're probably, most likely, you're a member of a collective bargaining unit that's part of a parent union, and the first part of a collective bargaining unit is basically the labor organization. So the term labor organization need to be understood fairly, just encompasses the whole structure of the labor movement, the whole structure of collective bargaining. So you say, I belong to a union. You also belong to and you probably belong to a collective bargaining unit first. And that's about, if we get that covered today, I think that's enough for today. I'm out here on the streets. I got some things to do today.
Well, Walter, it's such a beautiful day. I'm going to let you get back to taking your pictures. And there just seems to be a lot of material to this union stuff, in your opinion. So I guess that'll be left for another day.
So you've noticed this camera I'm carrying, Sharon. I'm glad you showed up and asked these questions. I'll be out here taking pictures or whatever in the next few days, and hope you show up again. But right now, I got this big building here. I'm taking pictures of the skyline. Hopefully, I can find a place where I can go sketch it out somewhere. But right now, that's what I'm doing today, just taking pictures.
Okay, so we're off the streets with Walter for today, and we'll catch up with him tomorrow, and we'll see you next time.